One thing that we could do, as I mentioned before, we got to have an actual convention. We need to engage voters of all 700,000 of us to say, hey, we support statehood, not just a ballot referendum, which has no effect on Congress. If the argument is we want to go the route of getting Congress to vote us in to be a state, like the last couple of states, then we need to do what those other states did, and that requires a state convention. And circumventing that by allowing council to just kind of play that role doesn't fit the norm. And if you're conservative, they believe you need not a vote of Congress, but you need a constitutional amendment. And so what Robert White, and I think a lot of allies are saying who support statehood very clearly, and is that there is a brighter future out there, that someday it's going to happen. Because
really?
Well, here's why.
It feels like we keep dangling this apple around, but it is not coming to fruition. We keep talking about it, but there's no clear strategy.
But here's why I say it's going to happen. We first started with 13 colonies. We now have 50 states and several territories. We do get better over time, as John Lewis said. Life in America it takes a little bit too long. It takes too many decades of pain and heartache and inequality and inequity and structural challenges for people. But America is a country that does get better. And it happens on days like today where people go vote for better. And so that's what I think Robert White understands, is that we can create those conditions. You create the conditions for statehood by working across the aisle, by working with U.S. senators, by having relationships with other members of the House of Representatives, so you can get bills of support passed in the Congressional Black Caucus or other caucuses. And to speak to that, D.C. statehood began, again, as a result of Congress. It was Charles Diggs, who was the first black congressman elected from Detroit, Michigan, who my colleague Marion Orr has a new book out, to plug it, called House of Diggs. And he was the first chairman of what was the D.C. committee that then created the legislation for home rule. It's always taken people, but I emphasize Charles Diggs because he was the first black person elected to Congress from post-Reconstruction in 1955. It's always taken other black folks and other Americans outside of D.C. who say D.C. matters. Jesse Jackson did it as well when he was, of course, an advocate and a delegate at a time for us. We have seen that it requires people outside the district in order to help the district. And not just us, by the way, but if you care about this, then you should care about it for Puerto Rico. You should care about it for Guam. You should care about it for Northern Mariana Islands. We have Americans who are not getting American representation. That should be a travesty. And I think those of us who are positive about it believe in days like today. And I told you, like, today is Christmas to me, because what you see, regardless of the results, and as they come out, and we're anxious to see them, but what it shows is that these long lines, et cetera, it shows that people still believe that democracy can work. Despite all the stuff happening in Congress, despite all the stuff that's happening on the White House, people are going out and voting and saying, my vote still matters. That's why there's a reason to believe that statehood is going to happen, and it's going to happen soon.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that note here, I think that you brought up a good point, talking about not only educating people around the country, but also DC residents. Right. You find that a lot of them don't understand the limited powers that this city has and sort of the disenfranchisement. And you look at what's happening with this federal surge and how this is playing out. And a lot of people are wondering, well, how can the president do that? How can Congress do that? This is unfair. So I think that even through this process and what we're seeing now, a lot of people are starting to truly understand why statehood is significant. So it'll be interesting to see as the city elects this new DC delegate and the powers they have and sort of how the messaging that they have with this, how that might change and how this might move forward.
Yeah, and whether or not we will see statehood.
Yeah.
Everyone's optimistic, and I think we should be, right? But I think for some of us that have been hearing the same song time and time again.
But I think the time is different, right?
At some point you get tired.
Yeah.
At some point you get tired of hearing the song.
You get tired, but I think if you live in the district and you see this and you go through it each and every day, that changes. So unlike the past, unlike the last decade or 2 decades, presidents didn't interfere with local life in DC. It was sort of left up to the mayor, the city council. It was this intimate gathering. But now what you see happening here, people are offended. You see them asking for their mayor to stand up for them to the president of the United States. So this conversation is totally different now, and I think we will start to see some movement. Maybe, I'm not saying that it's going to happen anytime soon, but I think city residents are passionate about it happening, unlike before when they didn't understand it.
It is a new day in American politics. So, well, we will see
Okay.
how